Welcome to Amy's Bookshelf Reviews podcast, and this is Voices Behind the Crime, the people, the pain, the truth. Open and honest discussions about true crime, survivors, victims, and the impact. This is a space where victims, survivors, authors, and those closest to the case can share stories that matter without glorifying harm and without losing sight of the people behind the headline.
Good evening, listeners. I'm Amy Shannon, and welcome to welcome to the True Crime segment. You never know where the conversation will lead us, so let's find out. Thank you guys for joining us, and will you please introduce yourselves?
Sean, go ahead.
My name is Sean Oliver, co-author of Killing the Lieutenant, and the titular lieutenant of which I speak is between us.
I'm Raul Diaz. I am the retired lieutenant, and I'm very happy to be here with Amy.
Oh, I'm so glad that you both are here. This is just, very exciting, and we just found out we have a lot in common. So I'm just the title is called Killing the Lieutenant, and then I was reading something about it, and I was wondering um why was why were you called a controversial law enforcement figure?
Why did you call it controversial, Sean?
Why did I say you were controversial? Well,
Oh, okay.
as sometimes happens in industries, and I think law enforcement is no exception. If you start to get a lot of attention, if you start to become seen as kind of the all-star of the team, based on what you're doing, and out of context, it might seem braggadocious, but Raul was a lieutenant during the crime-addled years in Miami of the cocaine explosion of the 70s and early 80s. And as the homicide unit literally could not keep up with how many bodies were dropping each day. And a very famous anecdote, which is true, the coroner had to rent a Burger King truck because it was refrigerated, because the morgue was so full. They just started throwing bodies in the truck in the back for the overflow.
They didn't have enough for the ocean, to
to toss them out, yeah. But they have to tether them by the foot in case they had to pull them back in and they solve the crime. They couldn't even identify the corpses, Amy. It was that prevalent. So he forms CENTAC 26, famous tactical unit, with the DEA's complicity and financing to be able to go out and do this with tactics maybe that didn't fly today. They were a little roughshod, but the enemy they were up against was massive. So yeah, controversial tactics, maybe by today's standards, but you're going up against people that were literally, if they were pursuing one person, would spray a parking lot with bullets. And it was happening every day. So desperate measures were needed. And I think there was a little professional skullduggery that Raul was subject to investigation after investigation, a lot of times for the same things, but every complaint had to be pursued to its fullest, and that would kind of sideline Raul. And he retired at the ripe old age of 33 after this very successful career. So yeah, I guess controversial, and if you count how many of the internal investigation charges he would have to answer for, but also equally as successful in what he was tasked to do.
Yeah, I can just imagine that. I mean, whatever you're investigating, whether you are doing research or you're a police officer or law enforcement, and you are trying to find answers, sometimes you just have to adapt to the situation you're in order to get those answers. So, you might have to bend something, and sometimes that can make changes for the better. But of course, there's always that scrutiny under the microscope. You cross the street the wrong way, and all of a sudden you're disgraced or controversial or whatever. Um, and you know, you hear of these things all the time with you know, people badmouth law enforcement, and that really makes me angry. I have great respect for law enforcement just because it's like anybody, just because there are some people that are not a good person doesn't mean that everybody is not a good person.
Yeah. And Raul will speak to this himself, but he was put in charge of the homicide unit right after the cocaine cops case, right, Raul? That was a year
Yeah,
before,
that
where
was a year
Mhm.
before. Yeah, they had uh, they had some of the most experienced homicide detectives in Miami-Dade, which made them probably some of the most experienced homicide detectives in this country. They got involved with a Cuban dope dealer by the name of Mario Escandar, and they became his boys. They started ripping off people and giving the narcotics to Mario to sell. They started ripping off money, and so they were incarcerated. They were arrested. They were taken to trial, and they were found guilty. So that left an incredible vacuum. Excuse me. In homicide. But the worst part was that the vacuum was caused by the absence of the most experienced guy. So when I went up to homicide, I was brought up there not because of my knowledge of homicide, but because of my management style and because the head of homicide thought that I would be helpful in making things a lot better for the guys there. The morale was down, so he felt
Mhm.
that I could fix the morale problem and then help them with some investigative experience.
Well, he sounds like a smart man then.
I don't want to say that. I was just, Amy, I was just very fortunate in that I was one of few people to have had a, good, a lot of experience in narcotics enforcement, especially with Latins, which was
Mhm.
a problem here, Latin narcotics traffickers. And I had worked bombings, so I had a certain knowledge of how to work a scene.
Right.
And a bombing scene is probably more detailed work than homicide.
I would think
So,
so.
yeah. So, anyways, I was brought up to homicide, and also because the major who was in charge of homicide had been my captain when I was working narcotics, and we made a good team. We got, our narcotics unit was able to seize more money and narcotics than the other six departmental units together. So he knew me and he asked me to come up there and help him get homicide back on its feet.
Well, it sounds like you did that, right?
Well, up to a point, yeah, I did that. I mean, these guys, these guys were really, walking around with their head down. And I think when I left, they were all keeping their heads up, and they were proud of being where they were.
Well, that's good. So what made you decide to, write this book together and, put this story out there?
Well, I don't know if I was featured in a book uh, close to 40 years, 38 years ago, called The Cocaine Wars.
Hmm.
It was written by two British people and one Latin guy. And that book was sold a lot. Then, and I was a big part of the book. Then there was a documentary named The Cocaine Cowboys that came out in it's going to be 30 years ago. So it found that if so many people had an interest in a certain part of my career, perhaps there would be a wider interest in my entire career, and I decided to go for it.
No, that's wonderful. I actually I interviewed a brother and sister who were basically on the opposite side of the law. Their mother and father were part of a Colombian drug cartel. The and then the mother was murdered. And the the son, he was in and out of prison, but he changed his life around, and he got back with his family, and they wrote a book together. And um, it's like when I was like going through the book, I was like, just reminded me of that, and I'm like, is that the same kind of thing? And it seems like what do you have I mean, is there like a reason why or how all of a sudden, we hit the 1970s and the 80s, and all of a sudden, boom, there's all this coke. And
Yeah, there is.
I mean, was there something that, I don't know, initiated that? Like we went from the hippie
Yes,
60s to
yes, there was
cocaine
definitely
70s. I don't know.
there was definitely a point, and I can probably give you the date exactly when everything changed in 1975. It was a date in which the Bahamian government, as a favor to Fidel Castro, prohibited the Cuban Miami-based lobster fishermen from going onto the Bahamian waters and fishing the Bahamian spiny lobster. There were thousands upon thousands of boats in the Miami River that were used for the fishing of the spiny lobster in the Bahamian waters. And once that happened, overnight, thousands upon thousands of Cuban fishermen in Miami were left without a job. So yes, there's a definite date that made a difference.
So they
In
decided to bring
so,
drugs over to make the money.
so these people, all they had was their boat and their
Right.
knowledge of the coast,
Mhm.
and so that was the beginning of the reappearance, rather, of the mother lode principle. The reappearance because the mother lode was created during prohibition. There used to be ships full of liquor from Canada, and then fast boats go and get 40 boxers, 50 boxers, and then bring them to shore. And that's what happened here. Instead of the small loads that were being brought from guys who just come back from Vietnam, a couple 100 pounds from Mexico or a couple 100 pounds from Bahamas, from Jamaica. The Colombians started using these boats for transporting thousands of pounds of marijuana, which were brought to shore by speedboats. And then it changed from marijuana to cocaine. And when you had cocaine coming in such volume, you had to have the infrastructure to distribute it,
Right.
to stack it, to hold it, to hide it.
Yeah,
Uh,
I've seen Breaking Bad, so
yeah, and so
sorry.
and so that's what happened
Mhm.
overnight.
And then all of a sudden like, I mean, with that, so I mean, your book talks about the cocaine godmother. So she have some power prior to this? Like, okay, I have coke, what am I going to do with it? And then now we have a distribution for it. Was it something that, was she always this powerful person?
She had a smaller infrastructure
Mm,
from before this era. She had been bringing narcotics into the United States for years, and she had a distribution uh, organization and a group, and the meanness to be a part of a cartel which was all men.
yeah, yeah. I mean, how that's, I know it happens. I mean, that's, how did she just, come to be?
Honestly, by being twice as ruthless. They say, a woman has to be twice as everything to succeed in the job of
Yeah.
a man. Well, in that industry, you've got to be somewhat heartless to start with. And she was, by all accounts, incredibly ruthless and very cold blooded.
So
Raul
she was like
tells a story. I'm sorry, go ahead.
she was a sociopath.
Uh, in the framework of a business, I guess. I mean, her upbringing, by all accounts, was horrific. If she was born to a sex worker. She had to become one herself at something like age 12. A pickpocket on the streets. Fell in with some kidnappers and learned how to do that. And she was actually the trigger person for killing one of the kidnap victims when the ransom wasn't paid. And this is as a little kid. So on the job training.
Yeah. So basically, she just crawled herself out of the gutter and just made her way to the top by killing people who got in her way, right?
Very much so. Raul tells a story where one of her intrepid hitmen, Rivi Ayala, was sent to take out a house of, what was it, 6 people, Raul?
Yeah, there were 4 men, 2 women. The men were shot, and I'm sorry, the men were strangled with with plastic bags. They had plastic bag put over their heads and taped, and then they died from asphyxia. The women were shot in the head, but she was not happy with that because Rivi, the hitman, allowed a baby to live,
Oh,
and she got upset because he did that. She wanted him to kill the baby.
so did he end up dead?
Oh no, no, he is the one who ended up testifying against her.
Oh, interesting. I just curious, but was there a reason why their deaths were different? Was like he just wanted it quick for the women, and because I mean it takes a while to stop breathing when you know you're being smothered. So was there a reason behind that?
Behind what, Amy?
Behind how he killed those people? I mean, he smothered the men with plastic bags, but he shot the women. So the women's death would have been quicker than the men's. Just curious.
I don't understand.
Well, she was kind of diabolical that way. She ordered a hit, Amy, of somebody that she wanted done
Mhm.
at Miami International Airport during the day when he got off a flight, and she wanted him bayoneted to death so he'd bleed like a pig. Now that's a suicide mission for whatever hitman's going to take that on, because
Right.
you're not getting out of the airport complex
Yeah.
after you're sticking somebody with a bayonet. And Miguelito was the hitman who took the job and was summarily arrested right there. But that was the kind of thing. She was that specific with her requests.
Oh,
Another time, one of her preferred hitmen, a guy named Chucho Castro, had an argument with her son because he started doing donuts in his front yard with his car. And so he got him out of the car and kicked him in the ass. And so he called Griselda and told her what he had done and why. And yet she had really go kill him. And what happened is when they machine gunned his car, they never hit him, but killed his 7-year-old son. And you know, then they still tried to get him again. She was a vicious. You know, there were some people who owed her money, and most of the people I knew in that business would not kill somebody who owed them money because then they knew they wouldn't collect.
Yeah, then they wouldn't get the money. So that's why
But
most,
not
they
her,
break legs or something, or
not her. If you started playing games with her about not paying her, she'd kill you.
that's one way not to get money.
You know, she was suspected of having had murdered over 340 people in this country.
Wow. So so what happened to her?
Finally, well, she was arrested, and she was arrested for and charged with 6 murders. But the main witness, the hitman, Rivi Ayala, got into having sex phone conversations with some of the secretaries in the state attorney's office. And that case had to be dropped. So she went to jail for some narcotics violations, and then she was released. She went to Panama and then to Medellin, where she was shot in the head in the same manner as she had people shot, which would be 2 guys on a motorcycle. Guy gets off, shoots you in the head, gets back on the motorcycle and takes off. And that's exactly what happened to her.
Wow. That's ooh,
She had a Bible in her hand. She filled the blanket with a Bible.
really.
Yeah,
That's Would she find God all of a sudden, or God found her?
I don't know, but he wasn't there that day.
Yeah, sounds like it. Oh, wow.
Yeah, I don't
Oh,
know who found who.
that is very incredible. I really want to thank both of you for being on the show, and I would love to have you back. And maybe we'll talk some music too. So thank you both for being on the show, and I hope you will come and join me again. And
It's
thank
been
you,
a
audience,
pleasure.
for listening. Feel free to comment on this show or any show. Join me again next week for more great conversations. And if you want to check out my work, just Google me. I'm Amy Shannon. Be safe, be well, and always be kind.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Amy's Bookshelf Reviews podcast. If you wish to be a guest on the show, you can go to amysbookshelfreviews.com/podcast and schedule your pre-recording. Please follow this podcast on Spotify, even if you listen to it on other streaming sites. Also, this podcast is on every first Monday and last Monday of the month at 7 p.m. and every Sunday at 6 and 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time. I'm Amy Shannon. Be safe, be well, and always be kind.